If you guys watched my review of Ahsoka episode 1 and 2 the other day, then you kind of know how I feel about this situation, but we're going to go in depth a little bit more. If you didn't watch my review, linked up in the cards. But Sabine surviving a lightsaber stab to the gullet. I just wanted to give some thoughts on it because it's kind of the only thing that I've been a little bit sour on after these two episodes, which I thought were great. Honestly, like outside of that, I have nothing to complain about from these two episodes. And honestly, I don't even hate is a strong word. I don't even hate the fact that Sabine got stabbed with a lightsaber and survived, because even though I hate, no pun intended, that we have to do this, there is some like plot armor and like fan theory, if you will, that we can throw out there as to why Sabine survived. Now, as I said in my review the other day, this is all coming from somebody who absolutely hated the fact that Reva survived not once, but twice getting stabbed with a lightsaber. And one of those being as a child in the temple during Order 66, and somehow she survived. I don't even want to get into the whole thing because like that's retracing back a year of just anger towards that moment and that whole show. That was the Kenobi show. I just don't even want to reopen that can of worms, but unfortunately it does tie into what we're talking about today. But outside of Reva, we can kind of look at the Sabine situation, how it ties into the Qui-Gon situation, which everybody always brings up because it's just like, man, Qui-Gon is rolling over in his grave at all these people who survived getting chopped in half, stabbed with a lightsaber, and somehow he died. However, there is a little bit of plot armor, if you will, and stuff that was already established years ago regarding Qui-Gon's death that we can bring up here that I guess makes some sense out of the whole situation. And listen, I will say I don't want anybody getting stabbed with a lightsaber and surviving. Like it just devalues what the lightsaber is, this like almighty weapon in the galaxy. Like after so many people survive, it becomes less intimidating. When I was growing up with the first 6 movies and then into the Clone Wars, it was like the most devastating thing. Now it's still pretty devastating, but like maybe not as menacing as it used to be, and I don't like that. Like it almost feels like, yeah, stay away from a lightsaber, but if you're in the right time and place to survive, you'll probably be alright. And it shouldn't be the case. If you get stabbed with a lightsaber, whether it's to the spine, to the side, to the throat, whatever, if you take that shot, you should be incognito. Like that should be it for you in the Star Wars universe. But we're changing things up, I guess. And really not even changing things up, because when you go and look back at George Lucas' Star Wars, which is what I hold sacred and what I think should be the basis for everything that is currently in Star Wars, and obviously we are well beyond that, and people have been disrespecting George Lucas for the last decade in Disney and in Lucasfilm and Star Wars. But to me, that is what everything should be based off of. That science, that what happened is what we should be referring back to. And there's really 2 major things to point out, and they all go back to The Phantom Menace 1999 episode 1. And that's Qui-Gon Jinn obviously getting stabbed by Darth Maul, and then Darth Maul getting cut in half by Obi-Wan a few moments later. Now the Darth Maul thing is a whole nother situation. It's been well documented how he survived. I don't really think that many people, at least from what I see, have that much of a problem with all the Darth Maul we have gotten after The Phantom Menace, meaning in the Clone Wars, in Rebels, his appearance in Solo. Like whether you want to call it plot armor or not, at the end of the day, Darth Maul, they made very good sense of Darth Maul surviving. And then again, I really don't think one has to do with the other here. But talking about Qui-Gon's thing, you know, it's been well documented Qui-Gon's thoughts on the Force, on the Jedi, why he was kind of distant from the Jedi Order, if you will. And the baseline of that is Qui-Gon just didn't have the same values. He didn't seem eye to eye. If we're just breaking things down into normal people terms, he just didn't see eye to eye with the ways of the Jedi, and he very much believed in the ways and wills of the Force. Remember, Qui-Gon Jinn was the guy who found Anakin Skywalker and wanted to make sure he was trained. That was his dying wish. Make sure the boy gets trained to Obi-Wan. But still, why did Qui-Gon die in that moment? I mean, if he had seemingly the healthcare that everybody else did, then he wouldn't have probably went down. I mean, if Reva can survive, if Ben Solo, whatever, I know he didn't get stabbed, but he got saved by Rey. If Sabine can survive, seemingly all these other people were just in the right place at the right time. I guess Qui-Gon just didn't have that same luck, didn't get the same healthcare benefits as the rest. But in all seriousness, I think Qui-Gon, and a lot of people have said this, I'm not breaking ground here, but I believe Qui-Gon just believed in the will of the Force, and that way it was time for him to go, and that his dying wish again was to make sure Anakin Skywalker got trained. He fulfilled, in a sense, his destiny for that time. And Qui-Gon came into acceptance with that pretty quick. And at the same time, if you go back and watch The Phantom Menace, Star Wars Theory brought this up in his video, which I don't need to plug it, obviously, because he's huge, but I'll put it down in the description anyway if you guys want to check it out. But from the time Qui-Gon Jinn got stabbed, to the Darth Maul and Obi-Wan fight, to them jumping back to what Anakin was doing, what Padme was doing, all this war that was going on in Naboo in that moment, there's like a good 10-15 minutes of Qui-Gon just sitting there basically dying in pain and not having somebody right at his side like Ben Solo had with Rey, or like Sabine had with Ahsoka flying in at that very moment. So maybe even though Qui-Gon believed in the will of the Force, maybe he would have got saved if he was in the right place at the right time and somebody was there to assist him. If that's the new plot armor that we're going to create, well then that's so be it. It still doesn't make any sense how Reva survived. I mean, it was the Jedi Temple during Order 66. You can put whatever you want in the comments. Well, this is how she survives. No, not doing it. That makes no sense at all. She's the only one. Like, I can give you plot armor. I'm not a fan of the sequels, but I'll give you Ben Solo dying, then... Well, I didn't even remember what happened to Rise of Skywalker, dying, then, or surviving, then it doesn't matter. The thing sucked anyway. And I'll give you Sabine getting saved by Ahsoka. Absolutely. Love those characters. But I will not give you Reva. You're not winning that battle over me. And another thing is, too, that again, people have talked about, is Darth Maul stabbed Qui-Gon Jinn, like, right in the middle, in the spine, in the organs, in the gut, like, and then kept it in there and roasted Qui-Gon's inside for like a couple of seconds. Sabine stabbed in and out, off to the side, maybe didn't hit any vital organs, and then went down, and then immediately Ahsoka was there to make the save. So again, if that's what we're doing to save this whole situation, well then so be it. And then we could just start piecing some things together, right? Sabine and Shin, they fought at nighttime the next time we see in episode 2, because that ends episode 1. The next time we see them in episode 2, it's the daytime, so we don't know if it was just the next morning, if a couple of days went by in the Ahsoka show. Really don't know how long Sabine was out and injured for, but either way, Ahsoka was flying in at that moment, got Sabine on the ship, flew right over to Lothal, and got her some attention. Maybe they threw her in the bacta tank, maybe they did the Boba Fett to Fennec Shan and put a bunch of freaking mechanical things inside of her. Really didn't see anything but a stab wound after, you know, they took the bandage off of her. And then in the positive, it's not like she just got up and immediately went back to the fight the first time around. Ahsoka told her to stay, Hera told her to stay, and then eventually she gets up, she's back at her place, and she's getting everything going for the end of episode 2 where she goes back with Ahsoka. So like, some time's passed, she's got some time to heal, Ahsoka was there to save her. I guess you can make it make sense, and it's, again, it's like not the worst thing in the world, but it's still my least favorite thing of these 2 episodes. And one thing I will say that I said in my video about a month ago, talking about how I really believe Ahsoka was like the last hope for Star Wars, one thing I said, and I think I was talking about all the movies and shows that they've put out over the last number of years, was that a couple of cool moments don't make up for bad writing. And the flip of it goes for the Ahsoka show as well. One bad moment won't ruin the rest of what I think has been a great show. It goes both ways. So like, even though I'm not a big fan of Sabine getting stabbed and surviving, I guess we can make it make sense. And considering it's the one thing that I didn't like about episode 1 and 2, I will live with it, I will look by it, and I'll never look back after this week. And we'll just float into episode 3 and the rest of the season, and I'm just going to enjoy what I think is going to be a phenomenal show. We're getting into this very mythical side of Star Wars, creating new galaxies like Dave Filoni's doing. Like, and obviously this is stuff like the mythical side, the magic that we've seen in Star Wars. We've seen this in the Clone Wars, all the animations and stuff, but this is really the first time we're really diving deep into it in live action. Like, we're about to see a whole different, I think, advancement on Star Wars, really pushing the entire galaxy forward and really just expanding upon what we already know, not making everything so close world, so tight knit. I think that's where we're going to get, whether it's the end of this season, if they do a season 2, into the Dave Filoni movie. Like, I think we're really widening the spectrum, if that makes sense, you know, with these new galaxies and stuff in Star Wars, and I think it's gonna be great. And hopefully by the time this season is done, we are singing Dave Filoni's praises more than we already are, and hopefully whether it's Ahsoka season 2 or we float right into the Dave Filoni movie, whenever that's gonna go down, hopefully it's all gonna be great. I know there was that rumor like last month, and I think it got debunked, that Mandalorian season 4 might end up being a movie instead of a show. I think it got debunked, but that's the way I would go, because season 3 sucks so bad. Having Mando just be a movie for season 4, I think would be great. Star Wars in the theaters, that just needs to happen as soon as possible. And then imagine if we get that, we get an Ahsoka season 2, we get the Dave Filoni movie, which is going to be, you know, the big Mandoverse Endgame or whatever they're going to end up calling this thing. It's going to be a great time to be a Star Wars fan, and there's still a lot lot of time to play with here, man. Like, you still got, like, I don't even know, 10, 15, 20 years in our current Star Wars timeline that we're in with Ahsoka before the sequels. And if they're gonna tie stuff in eventually, whatever. I think I said this months ago on Star Wars Sith Talk podcast, but as long as it's good, as long as it makes sense, fine, just tie it in, because they're never gonna retcon those movies. It just doesn't make any sense. So if they're gonna tie stuff in, just make it good. But you got a lot of time to play with here that you can really have some fun with. At the end of the day, that really has nothing to do with Sabine getting stabbed, but again, if we're gonna make sense of it, I think we did a very good job, the best we can do. Still doesn't make up for Reva getting stabbed. I will never let that down. I will give you Ben Solo, Rey, Qui-Gon, Darth Maul, Sabine, whatever, but I'll never give you Reva. You'll never win that battle against me. Nonetheless, guys, if you didn't check out my Ahsoka review in full, go check it out in the cards. And be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Go follow me across all social medias at NoahNation Vlogs. We will be back Tuesday into Wednesday for our Ahsoka Episode 3 review and possibly reactions as well if they go better this week. We'll see how the filming goes, but I'll see you guys next week in those videos. Peace.
This is Rogue 2. This is Rogue 2. Commander Skywalker, do you copy? This is Rogue 2.